for our second presentation. We're going to shift gears a little bit. I guess now we're going to talk about oil and gas. And Tyler Williams, who's the manager of PCD ICT security with Shell, is going to come up and give a presentation. So, welcome.
All right. Do you mind if I use this so I can walk around a little bit? All right. Testing. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. As Sid says, my name is Tyler Williams. Sorry? You want me to do this close? All right, I'm not sure I want to do that. All right, so I'll try this. I generally like to move around a little bit more than just standing here. But so my responsibility in this wonderful oil and gas company called Shell is to manage industrial cybersecurity across the globe for our industrial operations. So this includes upstream, downstream, terminals, various iterations of what we call upstream and downstream capital projects. So the whole gamut, all around the world, up and down, left and right. So it's been a fun, interesting couple of years. I've got 20 minutes to regale you with the history and the learnings and the experiences that we've had. It's not nearly enough. Most of you know I can talk on this subject for a significant period of time. So please feel free to grab me afterwards, and I'll happy to share anything that you are interested in more detail. It's tough for me to cover certain subjects in a very brief period of time, but hopefully this will instigate some conversations amongst ourselves and also in your organizations. So for 20 minutes, I'm going to try and be brief. So some of you have heard me talk before, and usually I stand up here and gripe about something, whether it's SP99 taking 10 years or the working group ITIS concept that all of us like to sit in our little panels and talk shop. But for about 10 years now, I've been working in this area, and it wasn't until about 2 hours ago that I started to get frustrated at a new topic. I sat next door and listened to senior leaders of our partners and our organizations that we work with, and 7 out of the 9 questions were about cybersecurity. And normally, as a cybersecurity guy, that would be great, right? It's been 10 years and finally we're getting some awareness, but now I'm frustrated because that's just going to cause more shiny objects. Everyone's going to start talking about the next advanced persistent threat, and it goes against all of the philosophical learnings we've had in Shell. So I'm a little bit, it's kind of weird that I should be happy about this, but I'm fearful that this is going to kind of breed another generation of consultants that we may not need. I think we've got the solutions that we need today. So this is the way that I will start the conversation today. And most of you have probably seen this in a number of sales presentations from people talking about their solutions. And quite frankly, it helped Shell, this strategy, this style helped Shell about 5 or 6 years ago drive awareness, showing nice malware increasing curves. But as soon as you started to talk to engineers, the math didn't work. The whole concept of defense in depth. Well, how many layers is enough? To find the ROI on that next layer for me that has a budget of X dollars, and I have to justify the value proposition. So in Shell, this is retired. This concept, it's good for information from a security perspective. My team manages threats across the whole organization together with our colleagues in IT, but we don't use it anymore. We don't go to our engineering facilities and say, hey, look at all the FUD. Okay, so you can believe that or not, but you're going to get hurt when you ask for budget if you're going to try and use this approach. So instead, well, let me take one step back for a second. So in our journey that I'm going to talk to you about, it's taken about 2 years, and we've got 2.5 more to go. We're spending a lot of money, and we continue to spend a lot of money even in this economic climate. And that should give you an idea of the importance that Shell places in the resilience and robustness of our engineering facilities. But sometimes when I come off stage, people say, well, that might work for a company with lots of money and lots of centralization and the ability to influence our suppliers. But it's actually not the case. We have probably the most complicated situation that you can imagine. We do have single assets that have single P&Ls that require single business justifications for every single firewall. We have multiple competing business drivers within our own organizations, within our own verticals. We have regional distributed assets. We have things that sit in the middle of nowhere. We have geopolitical issues. So imagine just trying to do something simple in a company like ours. So if we can do it, and our philosophy and our strategy seems to work for Shell, I think there's pieces of value you can take and apply that in your small organization. So I say this just to kind of defeat the whole conversation around, well, Shell is big, they've got lots of money, and they can do it more easily than I can. Because my colleague who was talking before about this, it seems as though most of the businesses start with a single-man operation, and it's hard to do security, and they're trying to justify a budget. But some of these things can really be helpful, and I'm hoping they can for you guys as well while you build an organization like mine. And there's 163 people in our organization right now focusing on security specifically. So the first thing we did a number of years ago is we decided that strategically we're going to embed messaging into Shell so that we can show key principles along the way. So things, if you look at the bottom, which is the most germane for this conversation, you'll see the mission statement that the businesses see, that the projects see, that the vendors see, and there's some key points in there. So we're going to procure systems, we're going to deploy systems, we're going to run systems, we're going to decommission systems, which again implies a life cycle approach to security, but we're not using buzzwords. We're using standard PCD or IT engineering procurement language, operations language. We're going to do it against one set of requirements, okay? And that means we have to ignore all the standard stuff and take the good stuff and just watch them play for a while until something useful comes out of them. But we'll take, nothing's changed. Patching's patching. Antivirus is antivirus. I mean, how long do you have to wait to get a requirement out for that? So one set of standards across all of Shell. And again, a security guy in me wants to go to 150 controls and do all those wonderfully, but actually we ended up at 11. And we did the math, and we thought that if we can do 11 properly, we actually can quantifiably reduce the risk to a place that's as low as reasonably practical. So across the life cycle, one set of standards, and everybody reports to Tyler and his organization, the center of Shell. So that's the mandate for Shell. We started there, and we drove all of our investment decisions turning back to this. And then following up on the vision, right? You know, Shell is a very safety-oriented culture. If you build in safety, you build in the profit function, you build in what risk means to a business, the ability for people to buy into the concept and the strategy means a lot more. Now, here's the most germane slide that I'll sit here if I have to just kind of make this, and hopefully this resonates with the crew here. We don't talk about cybersecurity threats in Shell anymore. Now, people still try it, but if a consultant comes into organizations, I'll quickly get a phone call and I'll be on a plane to nip that in the bud because it costs me a lot of money to go re-educate somebody about the value of security. So we've translated the concept of risk and threats into opportunity cost. Okay, so we've accepted as an organization that in the next 10 years, we're going to have to go farther, faster, deeper to get energy out of the ground and sell it to our customers. In order to do that, we have to use IT. The conversation around engineering IT, that debate, that's long gone in Shell. Either we've accepted that the generation that's going to continue to fight that is going to end up being retired in 10 years, or better, we use their knowledge in our journey to make sure that we can rapidly adopt IT technology in our engineering environments and make more money. So instead of going to somebody and say, you have to reduce your risk by investing this amount of dollars, we say, what do you want to do in the next 10 years from an engineering perspective? How are you going to use the IIoT, wonderful acronym, to generate more revenue for your business? And generally, the people have ideas. They know where they're going: remote operations, remote maintenance, corrosion detection, lots of wonderful remote engineering services that today we don't allow because we don't really feel comfortable with the standard architecture that everyone in Shell uses or historically has used to shell in and do some work on a critical DCS system or domain controller or a safeguarding system. So this conversation allowed Shell I won't even mention the amount of money, but it'll baffle you, a lot of money and a mandate across the whole organization to drive security improvements. So if you do this, if you translate the language of risk into opportunity cost, you'll go a lot farther with your education of executives, with the buy-in from engineering, and with the conversation between engineering and IT. Along the same lines is reselling cybersecurity risk is retranslating the language. This is another effective messaging campaign we introduced in Shell. Everybody in engineering knows the top left. It's a bow tie concept. It's barrier thinking. If you're an engineer, you understand proactive barriers, compensating controls, top events, consequences, risks, threats. Why not just change the barrier to control, create a similar bow tie on the bottom right, put basic practice areas. By the way, The respond, prepare stuff was way before the NIST framework came out. So hopefully they looked at our slide about 3 years ago and leveraged it. But you can see the same concept. So now we've translated an engineering bow tie concept into proactive and responsive security controls, all based around a top event which engineers understand, a infection, for example. And you'll see, you can't really see this, happy to talk through. We've picked 11 practices and that's it. We're not going above it. We're not doing shiny objects. You're not going to convince us to do advanced threat detection. We're going to do the basics everywhere the same way until we're done or until they fire me, okay? We're not going to evolve into the shiny object syndrome. It's expensive, especially for a company like Shell, and we've got our plan and we're moving forward, and that's our plan at the bottom right. Pictorially speaking, it resonates because a lot of people in the engineering world, they see this defense in depth, or they hear that defense in depth concept, and they immediately go, oh, okay, another layer, another firewall, another zone. Oh, hang on, that seems pretty balanced, right? If you look at the left-hand side, don't worry about what the names are. There's some proactive things. Clearly, as you're an immature organization, you have to do some practices, some maturing, some education, some inventory management. Then you start worrying about how to detect things and how to respond to things and how to get back online. So if we practiced the 125 controls that I inherited coming into Shell, that bow tie would look massive and would overwhelm people with the amount of things they have to do. This makes it seem simple. Just do this, do it right, do it across the life cycle, and keep doing it. Don't change. And then keep doing it some more, and then maybe think about intrusion detection. Okay? Be intelligent about the selection of the controls. So every consultant will give you a different risk model. So we made our own. The funny part is I've been around doing on the cybersecurity side of things, on the hacking side of things for a long time as a security vendor. So I called all my old friends and said, please describe to me how you could possibly compromise my controller. Okay? All the threat scenarios beyond just the scenarios they can think up in their head. And we challenge them. We challenge them with physical controls. We challenge them with different networking technologies that would prevent protocols from being executed or attacks from being executed on certain non-runnable protocols, for example. So we called their bluff. Can you really compromise process control in this facility, or is it still marketing? So you can see on the left-hand side, we used typical engineering risk assessment methodology. If no controls were in place, what could be the consequence across a selection of our assets? And is that tolerable for Shell? And then one by one, we added patching, antivirus, inventory, training and awareness, network segmentation, basic network segmentation, incident response. And that's where we got to those 11 practice areas. On the right-hand side, after the analysis, you'll see that's a tolerable risk in Shell. That means we can invest that next dollar in something more profitable to our organization. So intelligently applying risk model across the organization is a good place to be defensible when you're going and talking to an engineer. And on the right-hand side, you can see just translate that language into different specs. So in Shell, if you're an operating asset, you have one standard. If you're a capital project, you have another standard. It's the same requirements, just written differently for different stakeholder groups. I won't bore you with this. This is a maturity area, so once you have your requirements, or what we call the rules, before you do the tools, you kind of have your processes to support the implementation and maintenance of those rules. I'm happy to talk to you about our risk assessment methodology, our assurance process, our compliance monitoring. We've got it all. It looks great. It's connected. It's operated as a service, but it's the next step in the journey for us. We've already, this is something where probably most of you aren't going to be beyond paper exercise. Another important thing is our people. We all talk about the people side of things, so we did it. We took our friends over there in another oil and gas company and a few of our vendors. We sat down in a room. We didn't make it a public exercise, and we created a competency framework for the engineering, IT, safety skills that we need in our communities that are operating and maintaining controls in Shell. So if you're a maintenance provider, if you're a supplier, if you're an IT guy, if you're a support person, you're all going to get the same competency requirements if you touch our systems. Okay, so it took us a year. We went to SANS and said, here's our competency framework, developed by the industry, by a core group of people that are tired of waiting, and we made it into an industrial certification. Now, it's not the be-all, end-all, but it allows us to go to an operator that can now appreciate the value of IT because he failed the exam. Nothing drives behavior from an engineer or from an IT person more than here's a basic hybrid competency certification and failing it, when they sat there for years saying, this guy shouldn't be in my environment, one way or the other. It's a great level set. But you can also see on the left-hand side, again, a more mature organization like Shell can afford to put global marketing practices in place, stickers, USB, prevention mechanisms, all on the softer side of things. But again, from a people perspective, I could talk to you for an hour on that specific program alone in Shell. But it's live today, and we think it's really effective. So the fun part. This is something it's been a brainchild of ours for a long time, and this is where I'll end it. There's a lot of different topics I can talk about, but you start with the rules, you keep them simple. You apply them across the life cycle, you encourage your suppliers to get involved, you pay them for the effort that they're putting in place to introduce security into your environment. Don't expect them to just add security functionality and not pay for it. You give them practical suggestions, not you have to do all this within a year. You give them, just do these 3 things and we'll congratulate you, we'll reward you, we'll give you a next contract, but use economic drivers as opposed to you have to do this because somebody blogged about a security vulnerability. So what we did is we said, all right, we've got all these practice areas in the top left. We need a technology platform that integrates them all. Architecturally, it needs to allow us to surveil the landscape and understand what's out there because we can't really do anything without that as a starting point. I'd like a way of not having to have a CD from Emerson, a USB from Yokogawa. That's kind of sucks. Why can't you all just give me one WSUS connection centrally, native to your organizations? That would make the patching process for Shell globally pretty easy, right? So simple things that we thought, okay, well, we should probably be able to do this. Then we wanted to do it as a managed service because Shell is Greg will probably talk about the core versus context conversation. We make oil. We don't do security. And I'd like to get back to helping my business make more oil in a secure fashion as opposed to researching new security technologies like secure plans. So we went to our community of ecosystem providers, our suppliers, and we said, could you do this as a managed service? Could you do this to enable, in Shell terminology, OpEx engineering? Fascinating concept of not doing CapEx engineering ever again. Could you create it all applications infrastructure and just give it back to us with these requirements? And 2 of our providers came back and supplied us with a concept called Secure Plan. So on the top right, you can see our first deployment of 50 deployments. Again, 1 secure plant services many facilities. So it's about 195 physical locations in Shell will get this technology. You can see on the left-hand side all the things that it facilitates. Okay? I now have an inventory in near real time of all of my PCD IT components in a PCD. Not a spreadsheet, I have it in one dashboard application. From there, I can do patch management because the same technology I used for inventory management is approved by all of our suppliers, which means I can now query their devices. When I query their devices, I can get the patch status. I can get software being run. All the wonderful technology or the enabling activities from a security perspective that comes just from having good inventory management. Okay? So we can do inventory management. We can do antivirus signatures, standardized, consistently, centrally supplied by our providers. It's as a managed service, patching, security event log collection and detection, all wonderful basic stuff sold to us as a service. We don't have to worry about it. SLAs, OpEx, our businesses are happy. But you do this last. I think you should do it tomorrow, but you're probably going to have a little bit of a starting point where you have to define the rules first before our solution providers like Cisco and Yokogawa can provide you. So I'm not sure how much time, the clock doesn't seem to be working here, so I'm probably trespassing on my 20 minutes. But the one thing I do want to leave everybody with, maybe I'll touch on this. If you're interested, this is the sequence of deployment for our program globally. All this is trying to tell you is a secure plan as a technology fits in a small part of this journey. We have training, we have awareness, we have governance and operating model implementation, we have maintenance contract updates, we have all these wonderful things that are happening in Shell right now, but there's a sequence to it, okay? And there's a concept of maturity versus risk reduction. Our interest is in improving the capability and maturity of our own people and giving them that technology to reduce risk. Okay, so happy to go through this with you guys if you're interested. Okay, the learnings. IIoT is coming. Get on board. Okay, if you're fighting it, if you're hesitating because you're concerned that the engineering community is not going to adopt the next generation of virtualized DCSs, you're going to look backwards for a long time. You're going to be consistently putting your finger in the dike. But if you start looking forward and just start making investments in the right area, this problem will go away eventually. And the consultants will have less to write about because you're managing your business effectively going forward. If you dance and go backwards, again, you're going to stay there for a long time. So some key things: accept that the IIoT is coming, embrace it, use it as an enabler, translate security risk into opportunity cost, and go to your businesses and say, we'll take care of the security for you. You just take advantage of this new remote operations or remote engineering service that'll be offered to you that you really want, but the security guys have prevented. So, sell value opportunity, don't use FUD. It's old. I mean, this is the problem that I face sometimes with security conferences. We're the problem. We keep championing this, well, we got all these issues. No, we're the problem. We are selling using newspaper clippings. That's not going to work, and we know that. And yet, 10 years later, we're still trying to convince people to spend money with newspaper clippings. Guys in business are pretty smart. They know how to run a business. They know the economics. You might convince a single engineering manager in a single plant to spend some money because he's worried that the auditors might come. But to do this properly, make a business case for it. Okay? Sell the value, not the risk. Don't use FUD. Simplify, please. I know that there's lots of wonderful standards out there, and they'll keep coming, and we'll keep being involved because we're friends and we like the expertise that comes out of that. But pick 5 things of those things and do those, and then wait till the next iteration of standards comes out. Keep it simple, simplify it, do it everywhere the same way, and then don't get distracted by shiny objects or the next generation technology. Again, it'll be okay for a single plant. It'll be expensive. You'll learn. You'll spend the money, and then you'll have to rip it out. We did. And it's great. Those are all great technologies. I don't want to belittle the value of this next generation technology stuff, but until you're mature as an organization to operate security controls in a fashion that's commensurate with your life cycle, so your vendors are doing things the same way, your projects are doing things the same way, your operations, your maintenance, your support are doing things the same way, your people understand the value, all that stuff has to happen before adding a technology is going to be useful. Because then you'll be dependent on individuals in this room who will go, they'll retire, they'll move, and you'll be left with an intrusion detection system, which is really awesome. Apply the basics. Involve your suppliers. This is another thing that I've been railing about for a number of years. Suppliers always come to us and say, well, Shell's the only person asking us for it. Yeah, because we're the only people that are willing to pay for it, I guess. But we do see value in partnering with our suppliers, our DCS suppliers, our rotating equipment, any supplier of IT components. We expect the minimum, and most of you who have heard me talk before, our expectations are pretty firm because we believe this is a risk to the safety and security of our people. So we will expect basics, and we will not do business with those who don't provide us the basics, but we will pay for the maturity element of that. And I think the rest of us as end users have to come to terms with that. Otherwise, we'll have a hard time. Have a clear vision and strategy. Don't waffle on what are you trying to accomplish, and set that goal and go and accomplish it. A lot of businesses require PowerPoints with red, amber, green status to demonstrate to board and to other people who are looking at investment return that they're showing progress against the target. So set that target, make a program out of it, achieve those results, demonstrate return on investment, and come back for more. This second to last point, beware of shiny objects. I mean, I'll come back in a year from now, and I'm hoping most of you who are new to the subject or who are fascinated by the next generation technology, you'll know how expensive and difficult it is to use it, to apply it across the life cycle. So just be aware of it. If you want to go to working groups, I've done it for 10 years. It's fun. Get to have a beer with some peers and some colleagues and talk shop. But at the end of the day, your business is paying you to be there, and at some point, someone's going to say, what's coming out of this working group? Is it a document that goes to the next working group? Right? So there's got to be some tangible results. So try and drive those as opposed to just being involved in working groupitis. Everybody knows the Chicken Little story. I think that's pretty much gone from the industry now. There's still a few fear mongers left, but that's maturing as well. And then lastly, just the concept of embracing IIoT. Hybrid engineering, IT, methodology, philosophy, strategy, technology, services is the way we're going. So bring Yokogawa and Cisco together. Bring Honeywell and another firewall vendor that's eluding me. Cisco, for God's sake, I don't care. Bring them together to not only do technology solutions, but to help you evolve your remote engineering services. because that'll help you sell value in the future. So I think that's where the panel will start to kick things off. Is Shell the only one that's worried about more engineering services, more remote applications, more unmanned facilities, more potentially remote operations? Big cost savings. And hopefully security can be built in by this panel that we're going to talk about here today to support companies like us. But again, that goes across people, process, and technology. Integrate that language, integrate the frameworks, integrate the people, the competencies, and should be good to go. I'm happy again to answer some questions. I've probably thrown a lot of information at you. Hopefully a little bit of it was valuable. But with that, I'll thank you for your attention. I appreciate the invitation.